Hi guys, my god, the Tories are desperate. So much so that they brought Boris Johnson back, the guy who resigned rather than face the music of the Privileges Committee, the guy who claimed that there was a witch hunt against him, the guy who claimed along with his supporters that he had the country behind him but refused to test that theory at a by-election. So with hours to go in double figures before people cast their ballot, Number 10 and the Tories' campaign machine must have promised Boris Johnson something sweet as they dragged him away from, no doubt, a holiday or something, and asked him to deliver a speech, which may be music to the ears of the Tory party members, but I don't think it's going to change the direction of traffic. Have a listen.
Too many good, kind, moderate Tories are about to vote for other parties, apparently, and thereby get exactly the opposite of what they really want. Even if those other parties turn out to be full of Kremlin crawlers who actually make excuses for Putin's 2022 invasion of Ukraine. They say Putin's a good operator, puffing their cheroots. Putin's a good operator, runs a tight ship, you know. Well, if that's what they mean by a man who shoots journalists and poisons his opponents and murders thousands of innocent Ukrainian civilians, I say shame on them. They can achieve... They can achieve nothing at this election except to usher in the most left-wing Labour government since the war with a huge majority, and we must not let it happen. Don't let the Putinistas deliver the Corbynistas. Don't let Putin's pet parrots give this entire country psittacosis, which is a disease you get, by the way, from cozying up to pet parrots. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, if you actually want higher taxes next week, this year, if you feel you've got a few thousand to spare, then vote Labour on Thursday. If you want uncontrolled immigration...
Right, we'll leave that campaign speech there.
So, an attack on both Labour and Reform here, which is quite ironic that he's talking about Putin's pets, considering how much money his party took from Russia before the war in Ukraine. And of course trying to scare the elderly Tory voter with the idea that Starmer is secretly going to step aside and install Corbyn into Number 10 to the theme of the Soviet national anthem. Ah, my goodness, what a failure. They tried to run on the record on stopping the boats, growing the economy, bringing down inflation, and that failed. They tried to blame the war in Ukraine and the pandemic for all their failures, and that failed. They tried to claim that Labour didn't have a plan, that failed. They tried to sell the idea that Labour would be like going back to square one, that failed. They claimed their plan was to drag Britain back into the EU, that failed. They tried to lie about Labour's tax plans, that failed. They tried to attack Labour on VAT on private schools, that failed. And they tried a new version of Project Fear, and that failed. So the Tories are left with Boris Johnson, a disgraced Prime Minister that people will remember as someone who claimed that there were no parties at Downing Street, while people couldn't be close to the ones they love. Then that there were parties, but he didn't attend them. Then that he did attend them, but they weren't parties. That there were parties, and he did attend them, but he didn't know that there were parties, and so on and so on. All the while writing the rules and telling people to follow them. A guy during the peak of the cost of living crisis was using the RAF to keep himself entertained, who refused to put in place measures to help ordinary people because Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak would soon take over. A pathetic individual, but loved by Tory members because he won them an 80-seat majority on the back of a lie. Perhaps Boris Johnson could have had an impact if he was brought in earlier. I think for the public, they want to see him gone. They don't want to see him back. But as I said before, for Tory party members, he's something of a hero. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.